Good morning and welcome everyone. I'm truly excited to introduce our speaker, Moustafa Abdelrahman, today. Moustafa Abdelrahman is a registered psychotherapist and a meditation teacher and program facilitator. Moustafa teaches various mindful meditation courses and certification programs in psychotherapy and therapeutic spaces at the University of Toronto and at the Nalanda Institute for Contemplative Sciences, a global learning community to integrate evidence-based meditation practices into our lives. In today's session, we'll get to experience a brief guided meditation sample as a grounding practice. And joining me today also is my co-host, Kerob Salib, who will assist with monitoring the chat for questions. We will take questions after Moustafa's sessions. Thank you and welcome, Moustafa.
Thank you, Devin, for the introduction, and hello, everybody. I'm really glad to be with you today and to spend an hour talking about one of my favorite topics, which is mindfulness. And so I'll be using some of the slides to guide us through some of the points that I wanted to share with you. We'll also have some time to practice together. So give me a second here to put my slides on. Perfect. So before anything, when we meet online, each of us is physically somewhere, and depending on our unique situation. I was just sharing with the group that I'm in Egypt, in Africa. So it is your choice to search for the land on which you currently are joining us from, and offer gratitude to the land and recognize the First Nations ancestral heritage. So I encourage you to recognize that there were many of us before us that have created the space for us to be here together, and it's something that I ask you to reflect on as we begin. I also wanted us to do a very, very brief practice. You don't have to be a meditation expert. You don't even have to have tried meditation before to do this. This is just to get us all kind of to slow down a little bit. I know you've been, it's relatively, early in the morning, but it's also Monday. So we probably need a little bit of a breather. And so this practice I usually do, it's very easy, very simple. If you'd like, you can do that with your camera on or off, which basically, as you can see in the image there, is just to raise one palm of your hand, the right or left hand, it doesn't matter. And we'll just take 5 breaths. And basically the way we're going to do it is you'll use your other hand to track your fingers. As you're going up, see if you can breathe in. And as you go down your finger, see if you can breathe out. So we're going to try this out together. So do that with whether with your eyes closed or open, it's up to you. The idea here is for you to recognize your breathing and to see how fast or slow you're currently breathing. Okay, let's give it a try. Okay, so breathing in, all the way up the finger. When you're ready to breathe out, begin to trace it down, and then start again. Breathing in, going up. And breathing out, going down. Let's do the rest of your hand at your own pace. Great, wonderful. Thank you for trying this out with me. It's a very brief practice, but it really does help kind of slow things down a little bit. But I'm gonna reverse that and start to share some information with you. But you don't need to really learn what I'll share with you doesn't necessarily matter so much when it comes to practicing. It's just for those who are more inclined to learn more about the science or the contemplative aspect of mindfulness. If you want to, reflect on how it works, these slides are for you. But you don't necessarily need to know what I'll share with you to be able to just find some calm and peacefulness within you. But I think it's still exciting to learn a little bit about how mindfulness work. And usually we start by just talking a little bit about our favorite topic, which is stress. And in this modern day and age, we lead very busy lives and we wear multiple hats. And I just want to acknowledge that not only are we, in a state of constantly trying to catch up with life and relationships, if you're working or if you're retired or if you're challenged by life circumstances, there's also a scaffolding of, a pandemic that we've been talking about for so long now that is exhausting just to mention it. But I just want to acknowledge that it's still impacting us, and even if it goes away, I think the repercussions on our nervous system is going to take some time for us to really unpack and learn. But I know the Canadian Institute of Health Research and University of Regina have done a longitudinal research on the impact of 7,000 Canadian and American respondents and how COVID has impacted their stress levels. And as you would expect, it's been pretty intense. Whether how it impacts the physical health, mental health, economic circumstances, pandemic-related stress of checking the news, xenophobia, all these different reassurance seeking, all these different states of reactivity that we're in are still going on at different degrees. So I just want to invite you to be kind on yourself as you go through this session with me, and even throughout your day. Just remember that we don't have to be back to who we were prior to this pandemic. I think we need to take our time to just take it day by day and be gentle on ourselves, especially because there's been decades of research that shows that really there are many pathways within which stress impacts our brain and our minds and our body. So if you think about how stress works, it basically there's a lot of cortisol that gets released into the body, which can also raise blood sugar levels. It can raise your blood pressure. It can create some cognitive dysfunction like decreased attention or depression, all the way to inflammations in the body that can create chronic to terminal diseases. So with that in mind, stress is not something that we just talk about casually. I know a lot of times we say, oh, we're busy, we're stressed, or life is, we brush off those experiences, but they truly do impact our body, and they do in ways that are quite sneaky, but it builds up. So it's not something that I would encourage you to ignore. And specifically, the way I'm going to talk to you about stress is through a contemplative lens. So when I'm talking about stress, just to kind of be on the same wavelength, I'm not necessarily talking about the stressor, the event itself. I'm talking about how we react to the stressor. This is not to, for all the social workers online, this is not to take away any of the external stressors and the impact they have on us, but for the purpose of building inner resilience, we're trying to think about how our body responds to the external stressors. So when we talk about stress, we're not necessarily reflecting so much on the injustices around us. They exist, but we're more focusing here on how do we receive the information, the external information, and how it impacts our mind. So the way we approach this from a contemplative lens is that stress could be cognitive or perceived. So, for example, Kiro and I can experience the same stressor, the same event, but we perceive it differently. Kiro may perceive it as something that they can deal with confidence, but I may perceive it as something that's overwhelming and that I won't be able to manage through it. So perception is kind of the usually the starting point, but there's also an emotional reactivity. So think about, you know, anger, rage, shame, all these emotions that we have towards a situation. There's also the visceral response. So that's the fight, flight, faint, freeze response. This is an embodied response, which I'll kind of talk a little bit about in the next slide. And then there's the cumulative nature. And this is really where it gets challenging, because all of these reactions, cognitively, emotionally, physically, these are all completely fine. It's the cumulative nature of them when they're ongoing, when we're in constant state of hypervigilance or reactivity or burnout or fatigue. This is where our defense mechanism and our nervous system begins to get challenged. And so if you think about, you know, there's lots of research around individuals who experience oppression or experience injustices or inequalities, the state of hypervigilance that is caused by the stressors and the reactivity. Research shows that mental health is disproportionately you know, affecting folks who are experiencing, who are not part of the quote unquote privileged group in our society or in our community. So, but you know, why do we get stressed? And that's really important because we're just drilling down a little bit deeper about understanding how our brain works. And when we understand how our brain works, we may be able to tackle the brain in a way that is more effective and maybe more poignant. And some of you may be familiar with this image or something similar to it, but that's kind of a evolutionary map of how our brain as human beings has evolved throughout millions of years. And, you know, because of fMRI machines and technology, we've been able to map the brain in ways and understand the history behind it. And so if you think about the brain, just like we used our hand earlier, if you think about it as you know, if you kind of create a fist there, you know, my brain is kind of similar to that fist in its shape. It starts with the brain stem. So that's the oldest part in our brain. And it's evolved all the way back to, you know, our reptilian family members. So, you know, if you think about the reptilian brain, you know, reptiles usually are born into a state of immediate survivalship. You know, you think about how snakes, for example, when they're born, they right away they run for a shelter and fend for themselves. They look for food. So it's very basic need, very primal level of survivalship instinct. And then gradually, what's evolved afterwards was the limbic system, and that limbic system is shared with what we call small mammals. So it's relatively a newer part of the brain, but not the newest. And if you think about mammals, they are more of a social being. So they, you know, babies are born and they need to be cared for specific periods of time. They have some skills, but they also need relationships in order to survive and to reach adult stages. And then all the way to the most recent part of our brain, which kind of the prefrontal cortex or this part of the brain, where you can see the dolphin there. That part is the most advanced, newest part of our brain, and it's relative to our size. We have the biggest prefrontal cortex, and it's responsible for higher cognitive functioning, self-reflection, organizing, comparing, perspective taking, and all these things. So this part is where a lot of our thinking and perception exists, but also regulating all the other parts that I've mentioned earlier happens through the prefrontal cortex. However, because the prefrontal cortex is relatively new, when we perceive a stressor, the message goes faster towards the earlier parts of our brain, because there's kind of highways through millions of years of constant repetition. There are highways in the neural pathways that go to the brainstem and the limbic system. And so our brain gets overridden. The prefrontal cortex, the wiser part of our brain, gets overridden by the survivalship instinct of the brainstem and the limbic system quite easily. A good example for that, if you're touching a flame, usually your hand will automatically, the reflex action, your finger will, if you touch a candle or something, your finger will move before you perceive that there's heat, before the cognitive part of your brain perceives, oh, this is hot and I'm experiencing heat and I should take my brain, I should remove my finger. By the time the information is processed in your most evolved, newest part of your brain, you would have burnt your finger. So there's wisdom in the fact that the limbic system and the brainstem overrides the prefrontal cortex, and when there's danger. If you think about it also from an evolutionary perspective, humans were in the wilderness, and they needed to fend for themselves by noticing danger. So that's another aspect. Not only is the older parts of our brain, the survivalship-based aspects of our brain are dominant, but also there's a tendency to notice or highlight the challenges in our environment. So human beings out in the wilderness, if they see a flower and they're enamored by the flower and they keep enjoying the smells and the scents, they'll probably be eaten alive by the time they figure out that there's danger. So usually human beings highlight and are hyper vigilant towards snakes, lions, and so forth. And we've inherited this tendency, what's called in neuroscience the negativity bias, of focusing on and constantly repetitively highlighting the negative. We've inherited that up to this day. All of us are sitting on mats or chairs, or if you're lying in bed, wherever you are. If you're standing, you're relatively in a well-temperatured room. Hopefully you've had a nice breakfast, or at least had a glass of water. Yet we are still, our mind is still primed towards feeling some level of stress, because even though right now in this moment, our reality may be quite safe, that's not how our brain is perceiving it. Our brain is thinking about past events. I should have slept early last night. I shouldn't have eaten that extra slice of pizza last night, or should I have a very long day ahead of me. I wish this session ends soon so I can move on and finish my to-do list. So usually we're bouncing between thoughts about things we need to get done, things that happened earlier, and so forth. And all of this is not because there's anything wrong with us. It's just an evolutionary need that we have to constantly seek out challenges and try to fix them. That's what the brain's constantly trying to do for us. I'm going to use these color codes. This is just another way of looking at the brain. I'm going to use these color codes later on. We're going to follow these colors throughout the rest of the session. But the idea here is orange is the neocortex, most evolved part of our brain. Limbic system is the social part of our brain, similar to earlier mammals. It's where nurturing happens and emotions happen. And then the limbic system is the brainstem, the blue, primal, survivalship instinct, pleasure, fight, flight, that kind of stuff. The last kind of sciencey thing, and not really sciencey, but just part of kind of the miracle of the brain, is that each of those clusters, they have two sides, they have two modes. Just like you most probably know about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, there are these networks, and these networks have they're either in states of survivalship or they're in states of what we call thriving. So if you're feeling stressed, usually the network that is, or if you're feeling threatened, the network that is working, that overrides, is the survivalship-based network. And if you're feeling good and calm and you're feeling, relaxed, usually the other part of your nervous system, which is the vagus nerve, the newer part of the parasympathetic nervous system, is the one that's activated and controlling your body. In the states of stress, what does survivalship mean? It means what I've mentioned earlier: cortisol's flooding. You're feeling, blood is rushing towards your muscles because you're trying to either run or fend for yourself, and it's moving away from taking care of organs such as your digestive system. So you're in states of high alert, and it's nothing wrong with that, but the cumulative aspect means that your body's not nourished because it's constantly in state of readiness to protect itself somehow. So what we want to do is move from states of survivalship to states of thriving, shift from those two states in reasonable time. Because we are human beings, we are naturally, our default mode or the negativity bias is to lean towards what's not going well. So our default mode is usually cognitively worrying, emotionally experiencing unhelpful or negative emotions, and viscerally feeling agitated or feeling dissociative or whatever it is the visceral state of our body is at. And usually it's a subconscious state, but with mindfulness you may be able to track it a bit better. Okay, so continuing on the color code, we talked about prefrontal cortex. It's linked to the perceptive stress, and the default state of it is thinking about worst case scenario or highlighting what's not going well. Another great example, we look in the mirror. Usually we're not looking at the parts that we find attractive. We're looking for the things that we need to fix in ourselves. It's just how the brain leans towards problem solving. Emotions, again, I'm repeating it just so it all makes sense and links together. Emotional stress is processed there, and usually our emotions are reactive. They're not responsive, meaning, we say we are not choosing the emotion. We are just allowing the emotion to override our choice, and we're being what we call reactive or too emotional. And survivalship reflexes, obviously, fight, flight, faint, freeze. So body being constantly worn out by states of subconsciously or somewhat consciously states of survivalship or tension, of visceral tension. And I talked to you about the negativity bias. So I'm just gonna, one last kind of reflection here. If you're in your head, usually, if you're mind wandering, usually you'll end up, wondering about, you go into default mode and you go into negative scenarios. So if you stay long enough in your head, what will end up happening is that you'll find a challenge. For example, you might, as you were doing this practice, the breathing practice, you might have been doing the, tracing your fingers, but then eventually you started to think, oh, I need to cut my nails. I haven't cut my nails in a while. Why are my hands dirty? I should have showered this morning. I'm never able to build habits. Of course, my family always told me I'm a failure. It's their problem. Why was I born into this family? Like, our brain will constantly try to spiral into mind wandering, and usually turns out to be not necessarily the most pleasant. And that's universal, even though we mask it socially, so we can still be part of a tribe or a group. We don't want to be the negative person. So everyone, when we check in on each other, usually we say, I'm fine, I'm good. We don't necessarily share what's going on inside. It's our little secret, but science is already onto that secret. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking about challenges and negative things and move into like the positives, which is neuroplasticity. So for years, Western science believed that your fate is determined in your childhood, and depending on how you've been raised and in your genetical disposition, your future is going to be pretty much predetermined in that sense. But now science has recognized that with neuroplasticity, till the last minute of your life, you still have an opportunity to create new pathways that shift from states of survivalship to states of thriving or states of resilience. Even though you may not have had that attachment style that is secure, or you haven't had a chance to learn how to regulate, self-regulate, or co-regulate up until this second, there is a possibility for your nervous system to relearn new ways of being. Yes, during certain periods of time, during lifespan, there are certain periods in our life where there's a condensed and hyper state of neuropathways being created, but that doesn't mean that they're not happening at any age. They continue to happen, and it's a moment by moment thing. And the reverse is true. If you keep repeating patterns that are harmful, you're creating more pathways towards whatever harm that is for you, right? So neuroplasticity goes both ways. So neurons are plastic in nature. That has plasticity in nature. I apologize. So they're malleable. They change, and there's positivity in that. So here, when we talk about resilience, just similar to the contemplative definition of stress, resilience is perceptual resilience. So, we mentioned Kiro's capacity to notice, for example, that maybe the stressor that he's experiencing, or they're experiencing, is impacting their perception. That's normal. That's how the brain works. But in relatively a short period of time, they're able to shift their attention back to more realistic perception. So it is not about resilience from a perceptive aspect. It's not about not having negative thoughts. It's about recognizing that you're having a negative thought and shifting to a more realistic thought. Right? So same thing with emotions, recognizing emotions or shifts in mood, and being able to care for yourself and connect with others in ways that help you find emotional tolerance, acceptance, empathy, compassion, love, joy, equanimity, and so forth. From visceral, again, hacking the body in ways that allows you to create states of safety, social connection, such as touch, such as chanting, we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the adaptive resilience is the cumulative aspect of creating those neural pathways that when you experience a stressor, you recognize that you have the capacity to shift the stress, your activity from the default mode of negative bias to the mode of resilience. I don't have the time with me. How are we doing on time, Devin or Kira?
It's 11:29. Yep. So you've still got half an. Yep.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So if we look at the colors again, as we've looked at the default modes, the resilience mode for the executive function brain is realistic optimism. And the emotional, social, limbic system aspect of our brain, when it's in resilience, it is leaning towards pro-social emotions, connection with human beings or with just external environment, with pets, with animals, with trees, and the engagement, which is the brainstem, the visceral, resilient vagus nerve activation aspect of the brain, is social embodiment. So being present in the body, the body's feeling, in state of rest and digest, so to speak. And all of this has been, science with all its, this revolution of neuroscience is helping us make meaning of what our ancestors already knew. So this, proverb talks about how we have those two wolves inside of us, and so one side is the wild side, and the other side is the kind of the kind or the wise wolf. So the reflection here: which wolf will you feed, or which neural pathways do you want to cultivate? Is what we would say in the modern day and age. So this is where kind of mindfulness comes. This is kind of where I was trying to lead into this. The latest science about the impact of contemplative practices is being mapped out alongside the nervous system, with the recognition that there are practices that, Buddhist, but also almost every civilization have figured out, which is the fact that you can shift and create neural pathways towards resilience through certain practices. Mindfulness usually there's also research that shows that mindfulness activates part of the prefrontal cortex that is responsible for perspective taking, meaning realistic optimism, and also activating parts of the prefrontal cortex that activates when we're cared for by a caregiver. So there is a perception of this, self-referral of care and gentleness towards ourselves. And then also compassion-based practices, relational practices, how you relate to yourself and how you relate to others, in ways that are compassionate, meaning that you're recognizing the humanity and, leaning towards wanting to care for yourself and hoping for positive outcomes, actually does shift the limbic system into states of resilience. And embodied practices as well, same thing with the brainstem. Just if you think about mindfulness, and mindfulness has the, there are many definitions of what mindfulness is, but one of the simplest definitions that I usually like to share, and it's based on my personal reflection, is that mindfulness is recognizing what's showing up for you in the moment and having a choice, choosing what is the next response to what you're noticing. So, for example, we give that, if you're experiencing a stressful, there's stressful news or a stressor, or life is, there's constant micro stressors that you're experiencing. Are you able to recognize that that's the case? Are you noticing that that's what's going on? And can you choose how you want to react or respond to that stressor? Are you able to find the ability to recognize that you have the faculty to choose what's next for you from a perspective, emotional, and embodied lens? So mindfulness, to me, there's the famous John Kabat-Zinn's definition. It's the awareness that arises from, paying attention on purpose without judgment. But a simpler way of saying this is recognizing what is, and choosing, what your attitude will be towards what is. So non-judgmental, or kindness, or even screaming, or calling on a friend, whatever it is, that's the choice there. I'm not going to talk too much about how mindfulness. We're going to try to practice it together, but there's cultivation of attention, but there's kind of focusing on single-pointed attention, and then there's open attention where you're focusing on your surrounding and what's showing up. Because if you're only learning how to focus on one thing, you usually miss out on other information. And if you're only able to have broad perception, you can easily be swept away by stimuli, or stimulus, thoughts, or images. So ability to hone down and choose out of what you're noticing, which thought or feeling or sensation do you want to hold on to and cultivate more into, in the present moment. And same thing with compassion. Compassion starts with mindfulness. You have to recognize what in Buddhism is called suffering, which is in science would be called a survivalship instinct, and recognizing that our sense of self is mirrored with how we've been cared for, and whether or not we've been cared for in ways that allow us to feel kind towards ourselves. And also our sense of self is impacted by our cultural surrounding, our social circumstances, but not only. So these are the external influences, but from inside, the suffering is that we react to everything, and our reaction is usually leaning towards survivalship threats states. So recognizing mindfulness from when we talk about compassion, mindfulness is the recognition of that suffering, that we're human. To be human is to be flawed. We're not supposed to be perfect. That's not what we're looking for with practicing mindfulness. It is simply to know that we are just like everyone else, taking away the shame and blame aspect of the recognition, and choosing kindness. So the choice in the moment is to be kind. What is kind? What would be the most kind response in this moment, given what I know about the situation or the history or what's showing up for me in the moment. And when we talk about embodied practices and contemplative tradition, so they include mindfulness and compassion, but they're less top down, they're less prefrontal cortex down, they're more bottom up approaches, which can look like body-based posture, breath work, visualizing, role model visualizing. There's lots of polyvagal theories showing that lots of the contemplative traditional prayers that we lost throughout the years because of lots of challenges and political challenges and cultural challenges, but the traditions of chanting, being in circles, moving, dancing, all of these body-based activities, they activate the vagus nerve, which is the part of our nervous system that allows our body to be calm and to not only calm but also to be mobilized in an energized, helpful way, meaning more present in our body, and our body is flocking towards the present moment. It's not trying to run away or fight the present moment. So just a quick map for you there. When we talk about mindfulness or metacognition, there are many traditions that you can choose to follow, including Vipassana, transcendental meditation, Shamatha, relaxation, Zazen, lots of different traditions that you can choose, or you can just download Calm or whatever app and just follow that. And when it comes to kindness and compassion, there are different practices, including just loving kindness, or there's also prayer and imitation of Christ, or finding a role model. And whatever it is that my cat, that's kind of probably the most wise being that I have around me. So I imitate my cat as much as possible. So just finding a relationality, positive relational enforcement. And then when it comes to body-based, the lower part is more geared towards the body-based activities. So think about Qigong, yoga, tantric imagery, tantric sex, since we're talking about sex a lot, hacking our sexual organs in ways that cultivate chi and energy and allows our vagus nerve to be activated. Lots of wonderful explorations there as well. Okay, practice. We're done. Perfect. I'm done blabbering. We can just go into a little bit of being and instead of doing. And so This is really just a sample or taste of what the type of meditation that I've been sharing with one of the first queer mindfulness meditation groups that I started 11 years ago. It was one of the first in Toronto, and it's been going on for a while now. And so it is specifically, with the queer experience in mind, is how this practice goes, but it's not any different from all of the meditations. If you've experienced meditation before, it's not going to be very different from it. If you haven't experienced any sort of meditation before, this is your first time, even better. My invitation for you is just to relax and enjoy my guiding. And you can do that by, if you want to turn your video off, you can lie down, you can sit, you can do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. There's no right or wrong in this practice. It's very invitational. To the extent that I'm asking you, you know yourself the best and the most. If you know that you're not feeling like meditating and you'd like to go for a quick walk, or you'd like to grab a cup of tea and come back, do what you feel you need best. This is completely a practice for your self-care, and you know what you need. So if you choose to be curious about this practice, you're welcome to just listen to my voice as you find a posture that's comfortable for you. And I want to invite you to either close your eyes or find a point in the ceiling or on the floor to rest your gaze, so you're not too distracted by the images and the visuals around you. And let's see if we can notice how our body's breathing in this moment. So I want you to see if you can bring your attention to how you're breathing in and how you're breathing out. You're not trying to change your breath. You're not trying to reach any state. You're just simply curious and observing. If you're not able to notice your in-breath and out-breath, you can gently increase your breathing. So breathe a little bit louder or deeper, taking a deeper breath and releasing. And keep doing that until you're able to catch the sensation of breathing, so to speak. Once you notice it, rest your attention there. So you're staying with the breath for a few cycles. You can notice your breath around your nose, air touching your nose as you inhale and exhale. You can notice it around your chest as it rises on the in-breath, relaxes inwards on the out-breath. Even your belly, if you're breathing from your belly, you can notice your belly rises, expands as you inhale, relaxes as you exhale. Find any part of your body, of your breathing body, where you're able to notice your breath the most. Stay with it for a few moments. Be curious. And you'll notice that your mind is still working, thoughts are still happening, and you have a choice to shift from thinking to breathing. Each moment you can even use words. You can use the word thinking to just alert your mind that you're thinking, and then shift back to your breath. Not trying to stop your thoughts, you're just simply shifting your attention, allowing it to do its thing. You're just coming back to your breathing. Each time your mind drifts away from your breath is an opportunity for you to come back to your breath. It's basically your workout. Each time your mind wanders, come back to your breath, and that's your exercise right there. All that falling off the wagon and then coming back. That returning back is the resilience. Your default mode is wandering. Your resilience is choosing to come back to something in this moment that allows you to choose a positive response, then your breath is really great to help you regulate your body. So stay with your breath if you can, if it does help. And even if you haven't been able to find your breath, that's okay too. We'll just try something else right now. I want to invite you to use your wise mind, your reflective mind, to find one thing that you're grateful for right now. Be anything. Anything that you're grateful for. It could be a person, it could be a pet, it could be just the fact that you're simply breathing. And really savor in how it feels like in your body to hold in awareness that one thing that you came to your mind to be grateful for. If nothing shows up, notice that. If many things are showing up, just find one for now and settle your attention there. And savor in, take in the good, take in the positive. Even the fact that you're breathing, that you're alive right now, the miracle that you're here in this moment, that gift of life. Just find the gratitude in whichever that's showing up for you. Again, right now you're shifting from emotionally being reactive to choosing what's going well. Even for a millisecond, your brain will go back to wanting to find problems, fix them. That's okay. The practice is falling off the wagon and coming back to the sense of gratitude. Each moment is worthy of gratitude if you're able to rest the mind a little bit so that what's going well shows up. Lots is going well in your body in this moment. Body's working hard for you. Even with all its ailments and all its challenges, and we're human beings. We're not machines. We have we go through physical transformations, but just the fact that it's still trying its best. Okay. Now let's see if we can shift from gratitude to taking it one last step deeper by bringing attention to our body. So we're just going to familiarize ourselves with our physical breathing body by paying attention to the sensations. So our body's filled with sensations. A lot of it are happening subconsciously until we shed the light of attention on it. And sensations are, pleasant or unpleasant. They could be, prominent or gross sensations. They could be very subtle or blank sensations. They have different qualities. Doesn't matter. All of that doesn't matter. What we're doing here is basically bringing mindfulness or awareness to the body by paying attention to it. So we're going to do that together by bringing our attention to different parts of our body, starting with the toes. So you're bringing your mind's attention, the same attention that was noticing your breath, all the way down to your toes. So see if you can, if you'd like to wiggle your toes a little bit, and then you can let them be and just notice any sensations around your toes. Any sensations, pleasant, could be tickling, numbness, sense of cool or cold temperature, warm temperature, sweaty, or pain or pressure, whatever it is, or even undescribable sensations, doesn't matter. All we're doing is choosing to just be aware. Your toes, and see if you can move from your toes to the bottom of your feet, the soles of your feet, to your ankles, to the top of your feet, bring your entire feet in awareness. Notice the gravitational pull and allow your feet to feel firm into the earth, firm into the elements, the roots. And then begin to scan upwards by noticing any sensations around your calves and your shins. You can scan the right calf and shin, and then the left, or both at the same time, it doesn't matter. Noticing your knees, the front of your knees, the right side, the back, the left side. Any sensations there, bring your knees in awareness. Going up to your thighs, scanning through your thighs, again, all around. Your buttocks, pelvic area. These are big and dense, heavy parts of our body. We carry a lot of our stress in those parts. Just allow them to breathe. As you're inhaling and exhaling, allow the stress to dissolve away from your body as you bring your attention to those big boned parts. Now scanning the back, starting with the tailbone, noticing any sensations around that part of your body, and then gradually moving up through your spine, vertebrae by vertebrae, noticing the areas between the vertebrae all the way until you reach your neck, from your tailbone to your neck. A lot of nerve endings there. We talked about the nervous system. So scan through with gentleness, without trying to change anything, just being aware, and you can expand towards the muscles, the lower back, scanning from one side to the other, the midsection of your back, your upper back. Bring your entire back in awareness, allow your back to feel supported, protected. Bring in that attitude of feeling, firm and protected through your back. It's usually a vulnerable part of our body. And so as you scan through your back, keep going towards your shoulders. We squeeze our shoulders upwards. That's okay. Just allow them to drop a little bit more away from your ears. Scan through the back of your shoulders, the sides, the front, the top of your shoulders. Allow them to relax even further as you exhale. They carry a lot of thoughts. They're very close to our thinking brain. So allow those thoughts to just allow your shoulders to move away from the thoughts and just feel the lightness of just being without carrying all the worries of life. Give them even for a split of a second, a break. Now scan through your arms, starting with the upper arms, your biceps, your triceps. You can scan through the skin, through the muscles, deep into the bones, whatever is accessible for you. Your elbows, your forearms, your wrist, the area around your wrist, palms of your hands, and the back of your hands, your fingers and fingertips, your entire hands in awareness. Now moving to the front of your body, taking a deep breath through the belly and scanning through the front of your trunk. Again, another vulnerable part, not protected by any bones. The digestive system, the organs, sexual organs, the purifying parts of our organs, and all what they do for us 24/7, tax-free, trying to replenish. So gratitude to all these parts as you scan through them towards the rib cage, and the diaphragm that protects your lungs. Noticing it expanding on the in-breath and relaxing inwards on the out-breath. Your right lung, your left lung, and your heart, bring them into your awareness. Your neck, the back of your neck, your sides, your throat, your jaw, relax your jaw, drop it a little bit. You can open your mouth just gently. Again, another area where all of our stress goes. Your chin, your lips, scanning through any sensations, the mouth, your tongue, inside of your mouth. Notice sensations around your cheeks, going upwards to your eyelids, ever so gently, covering your eyes. And your nose, the air coming in and out from the nostrils. Your eyebrows, your area between your eyebrows, your third eye, your forehead. Scanning through the skull, the back of your head, all the way to the top. And even the crown or the area above your head. Notice that. Heading towards the skies. Your toes, one last time. All the way through the feet, the calves, thighs, pelvic area, front and back of your trunk, your shoulders, your arms to the fingertips, your neck and your face. You're just sweeping through, bring your entire body in awareness. Notice if it feels different from when you started this session. Could be no change, change to more pleasant or unpleasant. Just notice, recognition and choice. I want you to take your time to begin to reorient yourself back and start to wiggle your toes, move your fingers, and gradually begin to open your eyes when you're ready, no rush. Allow the light to shine through so that you begin to look around and notice your surrounding. That way you're back to also not only your connection with the room that you're in, but also everyone who's online. That practiced you today. What an honor to be together, even from a long distance. I want to thank you for being experimental and wanting to try things, try to listen to my many words and just try to practice with me. It's such a privilege. And just for the purpose of time, I'm just gonna say I think we're right on time. So I want to see if anyone has any quick questions before we go.
I am just taking a look at the chat. There was no questions. Does anyone have any questions? Please put them in the chat. If not, I had a question actually. So mindfulness practice for self-care, especially as frontline workers, is important, but we also work with a lot of folks within the harm reduction aspects of things, substance users. And very often I find that if someone is not looking to stop or reduce their use at the moment, that mindfulness practice might be harmful instead of beneficial. What do you think about that? Am I wrong, or what would be the recommended mindfulness practice for someone who's actively using?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's the meditation. So there's mindfulness and there's mindfulness meditation. So mindfulness in the sense of being mindfulness is more of a, we're going to call that more of a way of being, and meditation is the practice. So the practice of meditation, the intention of it is to it's kind of like training at the gym, so that you have strength throughout the day. So meditation is usually designed to help you, cultivate focus and attention and non-judgmental attention, so that you're able to bring that into your day-to-day life. So meditation itself, it's not necessarily for everyone, And there is research that shows that it actually can, for a very small group of folks, can be harmful because of mental health conditions and different states of the mind. So it's not for everyone. And I think, again, like I said, it's very invitational. It is up to you to know what's best for you. So you shouldn't force that on anyone. But mindful living is something that you can do in many different ways. And that's why I kind of shared more of a broader spectrum of practices that you can do, including going for walks, looking at someone, smiling, exchanging a smile or touch, or even playing with a pet, or hugging a tree. All of these things are meant to bring us to the present moment so that we're able to shift from our wandering mind into a bit of groundedness. So there are many ways. I don't think meditation is for everyone, and it fluctuates even in someone's lifespan. Sometimes meditation works great, and sometimes it doesn't. And we change styles of meditation, but aspiring to live a mindful life, aka being able to shift back to presence and resilience, is something that we can all benefit from. We can do it in many ways, and being a someone in the caring community, that's really what you're doing. You're trying to lend your sense of safety and your groundedness to someone who may not be able to find it in the present moment because of circumstances in life and stressors. So that's an exchange, and that's a mindful exchange in itself. You're offering your sense of care, so that you help someone find life even ever so slightly better in this moment. I hope that helps a little bit. And obviously, we can talk about this all day. Like I said, it's one of my favorite topics. But yes, I wouldn't say for everyone to meditate. It's very invitational, very optional. It is not the only way. It's many ways.
Thank you so much, Moustafa.
Thank you, Moustafa. So we have gone over time. So I've got one question, but Moustafa, I'll send that to you. If you could email that the response, we can always send it back to that person. So I want to thank everyone, and much gratitude to Moustafa for inspiring us to take care of our thoughts and what thoughts cultivate in us, and how to be aware of the cultivation of the thoughts in our process. So thank you, everyone. Please join us in the networking session at 12. It's open right now for further conversations. Thanks, Moustafa.